There it goes. So welcome everyone. I am really excited to have Igor and Natalia with us tonight. This is the oh well, I'm going to try not to cry, but the invasion of Ukraine was very upsetting to many of us, and I've just been feeling kind of helpless. And so I'm very excited because it's gone on too long and there needs to be really concrete things that we can do to support Ukrainians at this time. And especially with the election of a particularly cruel and divisive president, we need to as Americans, we need to step up in other ways, not just with weapons. So let me just start by saying that I am very proud that I have admired Igor from afar for a long time because he is a longtime environmentalist, and he was elected in May of 24 to the Berkeley City Council. And so I was really proud that someone as active and progressive as Igor was elected to Berkeley. Berkeley is pretty progressive city council anyway, but still they can always use that other perspectives. He served 8 years on the Berkeley Rent Stabilization Board and 12 local commission appointments and oversight of the multi-million-dollar federal budget. Outside of City Hall, Igor serves as Strategic Partnership Director and Senior Policy Advisor at Reimagine Power, a woman-owned boutique consultancy providing legislative and regulatory advocacy for renewable energy solutions benefiting renters and all who have been historically left out of the clean energy transition. And I think this might be a topic for a future meeting, actually, just giving you a warning there. On the international front, he has been organizing to bring distributed solar and storage and energy democracy through the deployment of an energy security Marshall Plan to his homeland of Ukraine. He holds an MA in public leadership from the University of San Francisco, an MS in engineering management from Duke University, and an MS in mechanical engineering, BA in political science from UC Berkeley. Natalia Goshtik, I didn't say your last name properly. I know, I'm sorry about
That
that.
was perfect. Thank you. No, that was
Oh,
great. No worries.
thank you. Came to the United States in 2021 as a Fulbright visiting professor at the University of California, Berkeley, bringing together research on ecological identity on social media. Since 22, she has been a lecturer of Ukrainian at the Slavic Languages and Literatures Department. Natalia was the associate professor of the English Philosophy Department at Pre-Carpathian National University in Ukraine from 2009 to 2023. She is currently the director of the nonprofit organization Center for Communication Research in Ukraine and a co-founder of the US-based nonprofit Ukraine Matters. And that's definitely what we want to hear about. So welcome so much. I'm so excited to have you all. And I see Mary has her hand up, but I am basically going to ask that people hold their questions until later.
Mistake. Sorry, it was a mistake. I don't know how it was there.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to ask that people mute themselves and make a note of any questions you might have, because I know there are going to be a lot of questions at the end of Igor and Natalia talking with us.
So you can put a question into the chat, and we'll get to it as we get to the Q&A time. And then if you do have a question, you can go ahead and do a raise hand at the end, and that way we'll keep everybody's questions in sync. Thanks.
So it's all yours. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much, or Дякую, which is thank you in my native tongue of Ukrainian, for this opportunity to be here. What an honor And what an appropriate time, and this was unexpected, but uh, I try to sync up all of my talks with an action at the end. And this one was just tragic. I was hoping we would not have to do this, but at the end, I will tell you what the action is. And so this meeting could actually not come at unfortunately, a worse time nationally, but a more important time to be here in community with all of you, among friends, to understand what fighting for democracy is about and what it's worth. So with that, I'll just tell you a little bit about my background. I was born in Kiev. I up until 5 years old, I lived in a 9-story apartment building, the same kind of 9-story apartment building that often, sadly, you have seen shelled and bombed by Putin's Russian forces. I was, my parents were there during the time that it was under a Soviet power. I think when Putin says he is trying to harken back to how things were, he is very much talking about what it was like in an age of Stalin, where there was an immense amount of repression. Folks would just get disappeared off the streets and summarily executed or sent to the gulag. Something that, when we talk about things happening in today's America under Trump, there is a lot of intergenerational trauma for me coming up as a Ukrainian-born Jew in terms of what is going on. With all that being said, this is not the moment that any of us wanted to be in, but my family has prepared me for this moment. My grandfather fought the Nazis in World War II. He enlisted at 17 and was one of the very few Jews that under Soviet rule ended up retiring with the rank of colonel from the army. My grandparents, my grandmother and my great-grandmother before her were both among the first women to be in charge of a chemistry faculty at a prestigious university. Both of these were in Kiev. My grandparents grew up in Kiev. My parents grew up in Kiev. I was born and spent my formative years in Kiev. And so when I still have family there, and I spent a sleepless night on February 24th, 2022, watching column after column of Russian tanks roll into Kiev, trying to get a hold of my family members. I remember messaging my cousin Kostya, asking him, "Are you safe?" And then just waiting with like the kind of, where you're just on pins and needles. And at that point, I had basically spent 20 hours awake. So it was also with bleary eyes. And just every hour that I was not hearing back from him was another hour that I had this sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. Eventually, he did message me back. He answered to my question of, "Are you safe?" with a "for now," as he was being escorted along with family members and neighbors into a bomb shelter. That is how a lot of my family members spent the first night. One of my formative memories of Kiev was foraging for mushrooms with a family friend named Ksenia. And I'd also reached out to see if she was safe. They had a family home, a dacha, in kind of in the, I guess, rural areas beyond Kiev. Apparently, a rocket had dropped within 100 meters from her home. And that's why we didn't hear from her or her family for a while. But thankfully, we did hear from her later, as they had evacuated their family and their many pets and were driving outside of Kiev. That is how I spent my first night. That is actually how I met Natalia, because after getting an hour of sleep and waking up bleary-eyed and wondering what I could do from thousands of miles away, it seemed like the only thing I could maybe do is, number one, go around that Berkeley half marathon that I hadn't trained for, to try to raise money for Ukraine, which my cousin at that point was working with some folks, very scrappily. That scrappiness has continued for years now, as you will hear from Natalia, I'm sure. But there were multiple mutual aid organizations popping up, and they were raising money for relief, resistance, and eventually resettlement. So in that time when we didn't know what was what, and we certainly, I think Ukrainians knew in their heart and in their bones that no matter what it's going to take, if it was going to come down to sticks and stones, Kiev will be saved. Ukraine would prevail. But in those early days, we were just trying to, I was running sorties every day, trying to send thousands of dollars at a time through the generosity of people like you in the Bay Area. Learning what the Patriot Act was like. I thought the Patriot Act applies to, terrorists. I didn't know it applies to me when I raise $1 over $10,000 in a week and then have to explain that this money is actually going for relief efforts. That was before major nonprofits got involved. But that's also how I met wonderful people like Natalia, because I think this all happened on a Thursday morning, and by Monday, I wanted there to be a Berkeley flag raising in the downtown part of Berkeley that I now represent on the city council. And we couldn't find anyone, or I didn't know anyone who could sing the Ukraine national anthem. And then several people told me to reach out to Natalia. And so I was, extremely exhausted. And as we all were at that point, anyone from the Ukraine diaspora. So I was like, well, what the heck? I'll just send someone who looks like it's Natalia's profile a Facebook message, seeing if there's an off chance that she could be available at 9 a.m. the next day. Thankfully, at 5 a.m. that morning, I got a response that she was available. And and Volodymyr, who I see on the Zoom as well, were kind enough to not only show up, but record that ceremony, something that we have since replicated several times, and bring their friends and fellow natives of Ukraine who were in Berkeley in the greater Bay Area, all on a few hours' notice. The war obviously continues. This is really, it's the 11th year, if you think about the genesis of the invasion, the original invasion in 2014, and Natalia can speak in more detail to that. Right now, I am continuing to run half marathons. The next one will be the Bay Bridge half later this month, and I'm happy to send you a link. Currently, I'm raising funds for solar-powered batteries that support both critical municipal facilities like hospitals that have been hit hard by Russia's use of energy warfare, as well as the army that needs it in order to be able to do what it's doing right now. But we have a very, very critical time right now. And of course, you can only expect this from Trump's administration to do something like this and the people he listens to. They're flooding the zones. So literally the day that this, I'm not going to call it conservative Congress because this is not conservatism. I'm going to call it this un-American Congress is voting on the single largest transfer of money from working families to oligarchs and dictators. Of course, they picked this day to also cut off funding Patriot missiles and other weaponry that have been budgeted for, allocated in the budget, and promised to Ukraine. So if this funding stream stops, Ukraine is not going to lose because of this, because Ukrainians are scrappy. They will continue to figure something else out. But more people are going to die. More military as well as civilians. People in 9-story buildings, just like I was growing up there, if we don't get this funding spigot turned back on. So as Natalia is talking, and I'm going to pass the mic to her momentarily, I'm going to put in the chat a script. And I would ask all of you to make 4 calls tonight, one to both of our senators, as one to our congressional representative, same script, and I will provide the phone number. And then there is a phone number that belongs to not my speaker, Mike Johnson. And that is a number where anyone can call from anywhere in the country. I would not leave your zip code for that one. I would just say as an American voter, and then just follow the script. We have, we have been blessed to have Democrats that are staunch supporters of the Ukraine effort. Several times a year, I go to the Hill to meet with all of them, and they have been great. The ask is going to be the same. To call the White House, this is going to be a slightly kinder version, although the White House doesn't deserve it, than a WTF are you doing? And to demand as an American voter that funding that has been set aside to win this effort to protect democracy, not just in Ukraine, but of course, as Ukraine goes, so goes the world. So we have to not let Ukraine be the next Poland or the next Czechoslovakia, and that's why this is so important. So I will put the script in the chat, along with some phone numbers and some links as Natalia is talking. And with that, it is my privilege to turn it over to Natalia. Дякую again for all of your support. Slava Ukraini.
Heroyam Slava. He was saying, Slava, glory to Ukraine and glory to the heroes. That's the typical phrase that like it became popular, especially since 2022 in Ukraine. Thank you, Igor, and thank you all for inviting, for having us, and for focusing on Ukraine tonight. That's very important for us Ukrainians to know that there are people who want to learn more, who care, and who want to spend their evening just learning more about Ukraine and hearing what people who are Ukrainians have to say. So I was introduced formally, but just a bit of an informal introduction because that's kind of not so formal meeting, let's say. So right now, yes, I'm here at working at UC Berkeley. I'm a lecturer, and that's my first year living in US in Berkeley. I was very lucky to get this Fulbright award. That's very prestigious award, and only around 10 people get that per year in Ukraine. So that was pretty competitive. And I came in 2021, and after war started in 2022. So when war started in 2022, I was, planning to go back to Ukraine in July, because Fulbright is only a 9 months scholarship. But I came here with my family, my husband and my 2 young kids, who are, as of now, here in Berkeley schools. One of them she started last year. She started high school, Berkeley High, and the younger one has finished the 3rd grade. So it's like 14 and 9, pretty young kids. So of course I was worried. I was sick worried. I wasn't sure what to do. It was about everything. So, well, as Igor was trying to, recollect the first days of war, I can totally say that was a complete sleepless nightmare for us, because we were thinking that something might happen, but we definitely didn't expect that the whole of Ukraine might be bombarded. So the city I came from, and my family, we lived in this city, Ivano-Frankivsk. That's like 40 miles from the Polish border, so very close to that. That's the western city. So we were not expecting to hear that our city would be bombarded, but I think a day ago, on the February 21st, Putin said that in this city, Americans built the modern airport, and there are modern aircrafts there, which was completely untrue, because in the city there are no, modern airports, and the aircrafts are not flying there. So you would have to go to the city nearby. So we were shocked, and we were trying, to figure out what to do afterwards. So one of the major decisions, life-changing decisions, was for me to apply for the job at UC Berkeley. And as of now, I'm working there, and I'm very lucky, of course. And that was complete accident. So I accidentally came here and stayed at the time. So let me tell you this way. So if I hadn't been in US, if I hadn't come, what would I be doing at this moment if I were in Ukraine, right? So because my colleagues, my family, they try to keep on with their life. So what would I be doing as the professor at the Ukrainian university? I would still be teaching. During the daytime when there are no raids, so when it is possible to teach. When there is Wi-Fi connection, if we have online classes, or when there is electricity and everything else. So at nights, looking back at the last 2 or 3 weeks, I don't think that in Kyiv there was a single calm night, and in some other cities too. They were all sleepless nights. So possibly none of us, neither I or my kids, we wouldn't get a good night's sleep, a proper night's sleep. So we would have to wake up and go to the basements, because that's where people are trying to hide from those rockets. And that's not only happening, of course, in the eastern cities, that is happening in the Kyiv, of course, central cities, and in the western cities. Because very often the question comes, is it safe in Ukraine, right? So are people safe? Of course they aren't. So safety is a very relative notion right now in Ukraine, regardless of where you are. So even if you are 10 miles close to the Polish border, that's the furthest you can live, you are still in danger, because the Russian rocket may reach you there. One of the, I'm sure you are following the news, but there are so many horrific incidents that happened. People were killed, civilians I'm not talking about military, of course, and which is kind of expected, but I'm talking about civilians that were targeted and died in their apartments. So the thing that happened a few months ago, last fall, and that was completely horrendous, when a man lost his 3 daughters and their wife in Lviv, that is the western city in Ukraine, and they were just trying to make their way to the basement, and they were, the rocket found them there in the staircase. So that's completely awful. So I would be doing that. I would be hiding in the basement with my kids, and then the kids would have to, and everyone else would have to wake up in the morning and trying to go to school, go to the university, to do shopping, to go to work, and so on. So this circle of distorted life is something that everyone lives through in Ukraine. Moreover, they are also trying to help military as much as possible, and there are numerous fundraisers and numerous volunteering things that are happening in Ukraine. So that's why, but I'm not there, of course. My family is, my friends are, and I'm not there, I'm here. And that's why just after war started, since 2022, we've put a major amount of time to volunteering efforts to raising word about Ukraine. I've done with Igor, we've done so many talks and meetings with people who were trying to learn, and I'm very grateful for all those opportunities we've had and we are having. But also with my husband and other people, we started a nonprofit, Ukraine Matters, because it is important to keep everything official, and that's what we wanted to do. And and since especially after 2022, when this first relief efforts were kind of over, so we had to focus on a few things. We couldn't encompass everything, so there were too many things to do. So we decided to focus on the families of the fallen soldiers, because that's a new community that started to develop here. Those wives and mothers and the kids, they needed support. Also, the war veterans. So we are also organizing retreats for people who are fighting at the front line, and they basically need some rest, physical, psychological, emotional rest. So we are doing that. that, and later I will show you. I will send you the link to the chat for the organization, and you can have a look at all the initiatives we are doing. So we have done so many psychological retreats and art therapies and so on. And also we are trying to do things here because it's important to keep the community organized, to create events that would bring together the Ukrainian community and the American community and people who are Ukrainian but were born in here. So we have done a few film screenings all over the Bay Area for with the support of the Consulate General in San Francisco. And just heads up, in early August we are going to do the film screening of two films which showcase the 1930s in Ukraine. So that will be a documentary and a feature film that will talk about the fate of the Ukrainian writers who were, those were Stalin times. Most of them were killed, right? But they will tell you, the films will tell you about the way people, lived and tried to work on the Ukrainian culture, but they also suffered from the Stalin regime. So I will definitely send you the information. Maybe you can share, but that's something that is worth watching. I have not seen the feature film myself, and I'm looking forward. So that's a good place to say a few things about the way the Ukrainian society lives nowadays. So despite war and everything else, people are trying to create as much as they can. So they are coming back to the history topics and trying to understand why war happened. So why is it, as it seems, impossible for Russia to stay away from Ukraine, right? So these are the questions that Ukrainians, kept asking themselves, and that's why those historical films and so many podcasts and YouTube channels, they just sprang up, and with all the technological developments and affordances, there are so many. There's so much Ukrainian content right now. People, especially young people, they are creating and they are getting inspiration from the past and trying to connect the present and the past, which is right now a very important thing to do. But let's come back to this question. What would I be doing if I were in Ukraine? One more thing before we can pass on to questions. I would also be closely following what's happening in US right now, because the last 2 weeks showed that Ukrainian cities are very vulnerable. And all those rockets that we need to protect the Ukrainian cities, they are mainly American ones. And if we don't get enough of those, so there will be more civilian casualties. So definitely I would be following every word of every, representative of the government who would be saying anything about the supplies to Ukraine. Unfortunately, as of now, this does not seem to be so encouraging and for people on the ground in Ukraine. But we'll see what tomorrow brings us, because sometimes things are very unpredictable. And we, of course, Ukrainians hope for the best. So on that note, I think we might open the floor for questions. What do you think?
Okay. Marvelous. What a great start. I'll start with a question. And by the way, if you haven't seen in the chat, Igor's put the information there. I will also at least send it out to our talk email string. So if you're looking for that information, I'll also send it out via email tonight. One of the things I'm curious about is, and you both mentioned the budget and the fact that the president is not honoring the things that Congress has already said the funding is there. So, knowing that, I'm curious though, is there even a greater impact because of what's going on with Israel and Iran? Is that complicating the issue even more because funding is now going from the US to Israel?
Susie, that's a great question. I am not an expert on geopolitics, but my understanding is that what we're talking about is funding that has been previously allocated to both. We have, all of us, I think, have complicated thoughts about Israel. All of us have, or at least Israel under the Netanyahu regime. I lived in Israel and I have complicated feelings about Netanyahu and what he's doing. All of us have complicated, I'm sure, thoughts about what the right strategy is in Iran. With all that being said, though, there was a budgetary agreement under the Biden administration now a little over a year ago that included funding for both Israel and Ukraine. So let me be very clear. Whatever Trump's White House might be putting out, claiming that they're prioritizing Israel, that is a manufactured crisis because funding was allocated for both Israel and Ukraine. So anything to the contrary is just Trump once again creating more divisions where they didn't exist before, or complicating divisions to the extent that they may have existed. This is very much about Trump. I really believe that he is an asset to Putin. He is a Russian asset. I don't know what exactly Putin has over him. I would love to know. I think the people would love to know. But whatever it is, what we're seeing are absolutely the effects of that, of him being very much under Putin's thumb. And what he's doing right now is part and parcel of that. Now, what I will also say, though, is we have seen pressure from everyday American. This is a bipartisan issue. We have had, Lindsey Graham was the Senate co-sponsor on the Republican side on a resolution that at this point includes over 80 senators, 80 of 100, in support of tertiary sanctions on Russia. Now that bill is also being soft-pedaled now because of Trump's whatever he's talking to Lindsey about. But let me just be very clear that if Trump is good at one thing, it is looking at where the media is at. He's completely paying attention to that. And if he's getting a lot of calls from members of Congress and the Senate being literally like WTF, that I don't know if it's going to move the needle fully, but it's certainly those kinds of tactics have moved the needle before.
If I may add just a few words here. So I think it's important for Ukrainians, especially in Ukraine, but all over the world, to understand that they have, a bipartisan support in the US, and especially if we see, wake up to the headlines that are saying that US is withholding the weapons, right? So withholding is a very tricky verb. So we don't understand what's really happening here. We'd love to see the math and understand, and I'm sure all of the Americans would love to see the math and understand how many critical supplies does US need, because that raises lots of questions. We don't have answers to the questions. The only answer we actually had from President Trump was, a week ago, and the Ukrainian journalist asked him when he was at the NATO conference, and she asked him if US is going to supply those Patriot rockets, and he engaged in a conversation with her and asked about her family, and she said she is here, that she lives in Warsaw with her kids, but her husband, he actually asked if her husband was in Ukraine, and her husband is right now at the front line. So they engage in this conversation, and somehow it didn't look like he said to her, no, we are not going to supply the weapons. So that was the only official, statement from President Trump that we got so far. And that's the hope of all Ukrainians, that Ukraine will have those rockets to protect the skies. That's very critical right now, because as of now, Kyiv, it is one of the most vulnerable cities.
All right, Diana, you're next.
Thank you. This was amazing. It was even more than I had hoped. So thank you to both of you. I'm wondering two things. One, I want to ask Igor to please put in chat the link to support you in the half marathon, and to please write, because I didn't write fast enough, what the batteries are for. That you're raising the money for. I thought that was really interesting, but unfortunately I didn't write fast enough to get it all down. So yeah, please do that. And has there been an update? Do you know the status of the children that were kidnapped and taken to Russia? Do we know anything about that? I know that not all the children have been returned, but I'm wondering if there's an update.
Well, there are people in Ukraine who are constantly working on that. There are official, governmental structures who are working on that. And as of now, we can say that if you saw that, like sometimes people say that, about up to 20,000 people have been taken to Russia forcefully. And only a small percentage of those people returned, so those kids returned to their families. And some stories are just heartbreaking, especially on those territories that were previously occupied, but then they were liberated. So the fate of many children is unknown. And the fate of some children is known. There are some Ukrainian children who were adopted by high-stake Russian officials, and that is known, to public. So they took the kids from the Kherson orphanages while Kherson was under occupation, and they believed that they had every right to take the kid and bring that to Moscow and to call the child their own, though they might have had relatives or in Ukraine. So one of the worst thing that is happening, of course, is that those kids they are subject to raising their identity. So the Russians are trying to eradicate any Ukrainianness they might still have, because we're talking about kids, young kids, teenagers. So they don't it's not only about the language they don't hear, it's about the books they are reading. So they are instructed in certain ways. Though in all those, hundreds of thousands of negative cases, there are sometimes the cases when there is one or two teenagers and somehow they are able to communicate to Ukraine and to the other parts of the world what they are doing. So a few weeks or months ago, there was an article in Guardian about the teenagers who are having an unofficial book club. They are keeping that secret, and they are reading Ukrainian literature, and they are trying to preserve their Ukrainian identity, and that is just fantastic. I just wish that those kids would stay safe under those circumstances, because that's not safe for sure, but they are very strong and courageous.
Yeah, and I'll just add one thing to that. When I went to the Hill a few months ago, most recently, there was just a very heartbreaking presentation by a nonprofit. It's a center in Yale, which is the one that has been documenting to the extent that they're able, and it's taking a lot of just forensic analysis, a lot of basically sleuthing to figure out and quantify to the extent possible how many Ukrainian kids have been kidnapped. Trump has doged that one office where this was being done. So when I think this was in March or April, and they literally had 2 months of funding left. So they were just transferring everything that they had come up with to the Hague so that it can be preserved and acted upon. But that is where we're at. It's already notoriously difficult to quantify how many victims of Russia's kidnapping of children there has been, including some that have been turned into war soldiers, just like some parts of Africa that sometimes we hear about. But it's now even more challenging because let me just be very clear. It was decision of Trump's White House to cut funding for that organization.
Yeah, wow. I'm just curious, because we don't hear a lot of news, period, here that isn't about the president. So one of the things I'm curious about is, how is the support of Europe to Ukraine? Is that, as I think, increasing to kind of make up for some of the loss of American funding and American weaponry?
To the extent possible, yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, that's a great question, and of course, Ukraine was waiting for a while for Europe to step in,
Yeah.
and to first of all to realize what is at stake here. So, what we are talking about war in Europe, right? But Europe was a bit like dormant. It was sleeping. So right now we see that there's continuous support from Europe. First of all, of course, Europe is not homogeneous, but the European Union is trying to pull things together. And Germany has been one of the countries that was able to step in and provide some of the weapons, but as of to the way I am aware of all the military aspect of this, it's not fully possible to substitute the American weapons with the European ones. And of course, right now we are talking about the mass production of weapons. So all the resources that the countries have, they are going to be spent on military sector, which is not something that people would like to see. We would like to see the developments in technologies and environmental care, but unfortunately, the countries have to spend money on military budgets, and so. again, to the extent possible, it has stepped in, but as far as I know, that's not fully possible, especially if you're talking about those Patriot rockets that help Ukraine protect the skies from those rockets, from the Russian rockets that are targeting the civilians in their cities.
Right. Right. Anybody else got a question? Okay, I have one. I have another. You mentioned environmental climate and things like that. Ukraine is a breadbasket. I mean, like California, you supply a lot of food not only to yourselves in Europe, but also Africa. And what's the damage? Is the agricultural industry able to continue? Are is it shut? We don't hear any news of this here. And, you'll hear a bit every 6 months, but that's mostly about like are the ships getting through the seas, or are they being blockaded? And so I'm just kind of curious and particularly from the environmental point, is land being so damaged by bombing that you can't grow food, that and that's one of the things we're always looking at, is what's the environmental impact on all this.
Yeah, I can I think Natalia can answer this question more fully, but I will just kind of paint a picture for you. Right now, Ukraine is the most heavily mined country in the world. It is going to take decades upon decades, and this is right now because it continues to be heavily attacked, including by mines by Russian forces, to demine now what is there, and that is using best available technology, which there has been some really impressive technology. I got a chance to attend a showcase of it in DC when I was on the Hill last. The environmental damage has been incredibly difficult to quantify, let alone put into words, from the intentional disabling of a dam that flooded villages downstream, massive amounts of chemicals that have been spewed into the water, the air, and massive amounts of damage to the already fragile ecosystem. And that being said, Ukraine is, well, they're incredibly scrappy. That is the common theme. So it's tragic that has been the backdrop and the context by which new technologies have had to be developed. And yet there continue to be innovations, even in the midst of war, which is just incredible. I mean, think about if, God forbid, our nation was attacked, and, obviously in World War II that did happen, and there was maximum production, but it was using existing technology. But what Ukraine is doing is they're fighting a war. They don't have nearly the resources that a country like the US has, or had in the 1940s as a percentage of the global GDP then. And at the same time, they're continuing to innovate, and they're doing it in a way that keeps the climate not just in mind, but front and center. And that's why, I've been focused. There are so many important efforts going on, and please do consider giving to a variety of nonprofits, including the one by Natalia. I have been focused my efforts on solar power and batteries, distributed energy, because just as we are fighting a battle here against a very entrenched investor-owned utility monopoly. Obviously, this is, no comparison, but there is a Russian monopoly that is completely backed by fossil fuel expenditures and profits, and that is how they are able to get away with this. If we were able to cut off the spigot here and stop relying so much on fossil fuels, we would be able to disable what Russia is doing immediately. And in the absence of that happening here, although we are trying, or California at least sometimes on some fronts is trying to do the right thing, not always. But right now this is the opportunity to showcase the power of renewable energy, solar, wind, large utility scale, as well as distributed, which actually also is needed right now for energy resiliency purposes.
Yeah, I will just add, I don't have the numbers to of course to go with, but I will just, you were saying that it's difficult to put that into words. It is difficult, but there is one word that kind of fits in here nicely, and that is the word that has been used since 2022, and it is justified. That is the word ecocide, because if you try to think about all the damage to the nature of Ukraine that goes on so many levels that it's just impossible to think about. So ecocide is this the damage of the whole ecology of the environment of nature comes to mind here. So, and we are talking about water pollution, we are talking about earth pollution. Yes, it is impossible to use the same land and to grow the same wheat, because some of the land is mined, some of the land is contaminated, so it is impossible. Then we also talking about the loss of some farms, like lots of farms, especially in the east of Ukraine, and some of the farms, they were directly targeted by Russians, which is difficult to think about. What did those? There are concrete examples when the whole farm, the cow farms, was destroyed. So like hundreds of cows, and they were destroyed by bombs. And you can imagine what would be happening in this on this territory in next year and in the nearest future. So the damage to area to Ukraine is enormous. It's sometimes people are trying to put that into numbers and say and talk about billions of dollars, but right now that's still we can't estimate very well. But for me, ecocide puts that really well as the genocide. When when we are not using that word lightly. What Ukrainians mean when they are saying that that's a genocide. So of course, Russians don't want Ukrainians to exist as a separate nation and to be independent and separate. If Ukrainians were more like the neighbors, Belarus, and they would be very happy to live under the influence of Russia and would be called the little Russians, then Russia would be happy, of course. But Ukrainians don't want that. We want to say that we are an independent nation. Just we want to live on our earth and to mind our own business in our own on our own territory in our country. So that's what Ukrainians want.
Thanks. That's unfortunately
in a nutshell,
it's so sad, but it's like, no, you can't figure it out when the damage is increasing every day. So yeah. Any last questions? All right. Well, Natalia and Igor, this has been an informative evening. I wish I got my little peace earrings on. My shirt says peace. And I kind of feel like, let's channel John Lennon for a minute and, give peace a chance. Marshall, you got a last?
Yeah, I mean, with regard to questions, there are a million, but I think the bottom line right now for us is the support that we can give um, based on the information you provided, the links, the talking points, the script, and so on. And so, yeah, I mean, questions, we would sit down and talk for a long time, but I think that really summarizes my thoughts on it. And as I put in the chat, I put all of your links, the talking point, the script, and so on in one document, a Word document. I'll send it out to anybody that asks. I've already sent it out to people, the one has asked to do it. So if you want all of that in one doc, just send me a chat with your email. Thanks.
And Marshall, would you go ahead and send that doc also out to talk?
I will. Yes, of course.
That would be
I
terrific.
plan
That
to.
way,
Yeah.
for people that aren't here tonight.
So,
Thank
you.
Susie, sorry to interrupt you,
That's right.
but I asked Marshall to hold off on that until I can have the link to the recording, because for those who weren't able to attend the meeting tonight, I would like them to have the advantage of seeing the presentation and then understanding how important those links are. So before we put it on talk or promote it, I'd like to add the link.
That's perfect. That's
Do
perfect.
how soon will we have that, Diana?
I had to unmute myself. So I'll have it tonight.
Okay, because we want to keep this timely. Okay, thanks.
Perfect. Oh, I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate you guys coming and talking to us, because, right now we're kind of in a little international bit in our club, but hearing about what's happened in Ukraine is just, it's heart-wrenching. And I just feel like we're not hearing enough because our own news just ignores it. And so unless we're reading some of the European newspapers, that's the only time we're going to hear updates. So it was really nice, and particularly hearing, I can't imagine what it'd be like knowing my family was there. Last question, are you able to go home? Can you get back to the Ukraine, or?
I can, though I had difficult. Well, actually I can, of course. Though there was always, an issue for me with, visa and then the contract renewal. So that was not possible for me as of now. So there were some discrepancies time-wise, right, for me. But that, of course, I could go.
Well,
I know this was Natalia's answer was a lot more important than mine, but I'm trying to get back. Working on a sister city relationship right now. Once that is in effect,
let's do that, Igor.
But let's keep working on it. I will say, I am concerned. I'm a naturalized citizen, and this is the first time, like literally the last few months is when I felt like, even as a naturalized citizen who, is in this country, using what Trump so lovingly referred to as chain migration. That's how we got our family in here.
Right.
I'm sort of just I'm planning to travel back there, and I am planning to come back after I travel there. But I'm also just kind of doing this with the maybe not the expectation, but trying to be prepared for challenges, even just traveling abroad right now for a naturalized citizen like me.
It's not the going, it's the coming back that you might want to worry about it. So
Yeah.
I worry about all my friends who are going, especially from communities of color, if they're going to El Salvador or any place, if they're naturalized citizens, I worry about them being able to come back. So it's
Well,
a very real concern for our
it
residents.
is because the president is talking about denaturalizing citizens. And I just kind of go, I mean, it's the same thing with the birthright. A child's born here, it is an American citizen. That's, the Constitution. And but the president says, well, no, I don't think so. And I just have to question, well, you know what? His children, what about their, yeah, I could go on. Marshall, last thought.
Well, that's why we have to get out there in gigantic numbers so that they'll realize that we actually do have power to stop their reelection. Even if they try to stop an election, we have the power if we get out there in 20 million or more people. Forget 12 million. We need a monstrous demonstration everywhere. They don't have enough bullets for everybody.
Ooh.
All right. Well, Natalia and Igor, I really thank you. It's just been a terrific evening. And yeah, we've got some phone calls to make.
Yeah, please
thank you
do.
for
That's
giving
very
us-
important.
giving us calls to action, because that's something that we'll definitely be sharing out with all those that weren't here tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.